Having a Gas is the podcast that chats to the great and the good of the creative industries, and in particular finds out what makes great music for film, for TV, for commercials, for cooking to, for dancing to, f***ing to, and more. Today I'm having a gas with James Cross, a creative director at BBC Creative. James has worked his way gradually up north, working at record labels and creative agencies such as McCann Manchester, before getting headhunted for the BBC's in-house team. Assuming that being part of the BBC machine, that you're still pulled from pillar to post working, because I presume that you've all just been on it since COVID started.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's been. I think there was kind of a big change in our sort of marketing plan for the year. So we were sort of happily ticking along, making ads for the Olympics and various things, and then it all kind of went out the window. A lot of things stopped getting filmed, events got cancelled.
Yeah.
And then sort of public opinion, I suppose, when COVID started of the BBC, actually started to go up because we were kind of getting battered just after the election. Yes. A little bit, with Boris Johnson selling us out a little bit. And then, the public opinion has turned around. It felt like the BBC was more of a glue. So the whole Bringing Us Closer campaign came from that, really.
Yeah. I get the impression that you guys are always up against it in the BBC machine, because no matter what you do, you're always vilified as supporting one side or the other politically.
Well, yeah, we don't. Well, I think the point is we don't support anyone.
Yeah.
It's all about. We have to be completely neutral. So yeah, Emily Maitlis, as you know, a lot of people really agree with what she said about Dominic Cummings.
Yes.
It's the BBC isn't a soapbox, so it's not surprising. But the BBC also has a problem where it doesn't communicate these things very well. It acts first and then communicates second when it's a bit too late. But we do our best. But yeah, we get attacked from every angle. Every morning we get a complaints email which has a number of complaints about whatever. So if it's saying the BBC is too far to the left, you'll almost always get the counter argument, the same amount of complaints saying it's too far to the right, all this sort of thing. But,
so they kind of cancel each other out and you end up nicely in the middle.
Pretty much, yeah. A lot of people don't really realise that, but I think if you hear something that doesn't tally to your view of the world, you get angry about it, but it's all about balance.
Does that even come through to the creative department? Because I don't know, my suspicion is that would always stay on news side of things, current affairs.
A little, I suppose. There's certain things that we might write in scripts and work we want to put out, which may be seen as a bit controversial. The BBC is quite a sort of conservative. It doesn't really, there's across the corporation that you don't want to upset anyone. Yeah. It's always about balance, but in creative it affects what we do as well, definitely.
So one thing I was interested to get your take on is because you've had a relatively varied career, but you've worked for two of the big names. So you've worked for McCann and you've worked for BBC Creative. How do they compare? They're very different. I think it's the world of McCann is probably a lot more sort of entrepreneurial and a bit more cutthroat, whereas the BBC environment is a lot more supportive in terms of creating new things and doing things that haven't been done before. You're more likely, I'd say, to get good work out at the BBC than McCann because it's not the traditional commercial ad agency where you've necessarily got high-paying clients to consider and make them happy. The BBC is an environment where you can do a lot better work and you can take a few more gambles and push the boundary a little bit. And I think when I look at the work we've done in the 3 years Tim and I we've been at the BBC, I think it far outweighs the previous 11, 12 years of our career in terms of what we have.
and it's more prolific as well. The biggest difference is we're just more prolific in what we do. So we always talk about McCann, where it would be an achievement to get, say, 4 TV ads out in a year.
Wow.
We're probably doing that in a month.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing my research for this, I just went through campaign BBC Creative, and I've seen at least that many just since lockdown started.
Yeah, which is, as a creative, it's so gratifying to work in that way. Yeah, it's a joy. There's always something going on. There's always the next thing. I suppose the bad side of that is that sometimes you can sort of lose a bit of ambition in creatives. So as a creative, you'll be writing something, and if it doesn't get chosen, the next brief's coming at the BBC. Whereas if you're, say, at an agency like McCann, not to win Christmas, the Christmas campaign for Aldi would affect Tim and I for quite a few months, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's probably another big difference. But yeah, that is preferable to me to be able to do so much work.
So I first saw you talking about your relationship with those, with the normal, let's say, creative world and BBC Creative at last year's Drum Awards, the Drum Roses Awards. Yeah. And you hinted at the award speech, because you guys picked up, of course, a lot of gongs for the World Cup advert.
Yeah, I was drunk by this point. I'd just like to carry out. I don't know what you're going to say next.
I suspected as much, but it was still, it came over well. No, you indicated that at one point you had hesitations about moving across to BBC. Again, I can. You don't have to go into it, but if there's anything
we absolutely did. BBC Creative was quite a new thing when we joined, so it was only sort of 6 months old as a proposition, and people didn't really know a great deal about it. We certainly didn't, and didn't have sort of significant work. And we were approached by the BBC 2 or 3 times. And we did turn them down a couple of times, thinking, it's all the work seems to be is, trailers for EastEnders, and, we don't want to be doing that. But once we met Aidan and Laron, who were the sort of founding ECDs, all became clear, and then seemed like a very calculated risk to us to be able to set up BBC Creative in the Northwest. And the clients, we were told, we'd have BBC Sports and children's and the charities and learning. It actually seemed like kind of the best deal as well. So we were, delighted and felt very privileged. And within a few weeks, we realised that we'd made the right decision.
So you and Tim, this is Tim Jones, isn't it? He's your creative other half.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Tim and I we've worked together since 2006 or 2007, something like that. And so we've been through it all together. But Tim, we're together in the trenches every day, which is nice.
So are you the typical creative pairing? Is it art director, writer, or do you guys duck and weave?
Yeah. So I'm the writer, Tim's the art director. I think as we got older, as we sort of got more experience, both of us had sensibilities in each. It's weird, a lot of the copywriting awards that we won have actually been Tim's copywriting, and a lot of the art direction awards have been sort of my art direction. But so we I think we can both sort of ably do both sort of disciplines, but I think we do default to each other's sort of area of expertise regularly, and that's how we work as creative directors as well. We'll always get each other's opinion on together, which generally we're not always working together these days. I know that BBC Creative up here is a department. At first I was under the impression this was the whole thing, but there's a big part of the shop is in London, isn't it? Yeah, so we are one agency. We just got 2 locations.
Yeah.
There's about 150 or so people in London, and anything between sort of 25 and 30 of us in Salford. And what the creative department that Tim and I can call upon is not just in Salford, it's actually in London as well. So in normal times, we'd easily be in London maybe a couple of days a week. So yeah, it's just two locations, and the Salford office is purely to serve BBC Sport and Children's and Learning, because those BBC departments are based at Salford as well.
Yeah. So one thing I was interested to kind of break into the music side of things through was, of course, you did the World Cup campaign, and you had the composition by Baranowski done at Abbey Road. Were you able to be there for the session?
Yeah, that was the coolest. Well, the coolest days of my career. It was it was amazing to be in those studios, and I was leaning when we were recording. I was actually in the studio just watching from the sidelines and leaning on an old piano, which had sort of, I don't know, screwdrivers laying all over it and stuff. And some guy told me, "Oh, that's the Lady Madonna piano."
As if.
And it was just nuts. Yeah, it was just nuts. Really cool, amazing experience.
Yeah, that's the thing. I spoke to Steve Albini a couple of weeks ago, who, the In Utero guy, and he said, I love Abbey Road because you can just say, "Can we have the Pink Floyd tape machine? Get it in here."
Yeah, exactly. It is completely like that. It's it's a magical place. And I've spent the last 2 years trying to go back for every single thing we need it for.
How do they look after you there as a client? Is it just like everything's done when you get there, or like
at Abbey Road?
Yeah.
I suppose as any studio would, there's an abundance of tea and biscuits. It's nothing special about how you're looked after, I'd say. But I think being the kudos of being there and the sort of the magic of the place, it really is. It has an atmosphere, and it just feels special. And I think, it really suited that project as well.
I'm guessing it's like far and away above most of the studio sessions I've done, especially here in the north. You get there at 10:30, and then the engineer gets out of bed, and it's like, all right, should we start setting up some mics, or what do you want to do? So,
yeah, totally. Yeah, it was very very slick. I don't think I've ever really been to. Nothing springs to mind of other studios I've been to. It hasn't been massively memorable in that sense, but Abbey Road certainly sticks out.
You had a bit of a musical beginning, didn't you, in your career?
I did, yeah. I just wanted to work in the music industry when I was at school. So, when I was doing my GCSEs, it was sort of a time of Britpop and all that sort of thing. So I just wanted to work for, my ambition was to work for Poptones when I was, Creation Records when I was 16, 17, which became Poptones, so Alan McGee and all that. And at university I spent offices working for free, basically chucking CDs around and listening to demos, which, when you used to send your demo tape in and it arrives in a big sack and they just give it to the work experience kid to listen to. It kind of, I think the music industry lost a lot of its magic at that point, realizing that, why am I listening and why am I suddenly the judge of people's music? And
that's what was happening. You were the A&R representative.
Yeah, weirdly. Well, just sort of for something let's get that kid doing something. And you can go and listen to those for an hour. Yeah. So I was doing that, lugging records around, and I think I was actually a drugs mule as well. I'd regularly be given parcels to take to random addresses in Primrose Hill and all this sort of thing, which I never questioned at the time. It wasn't until a few years ago a friend pointed out that was probably what I was doing.
Yeah. What was the allure of the industry? Were you a musician, or what did you want to be?
You're kind of a bedroom guitarist and messed around with bands in my youth. But sort of never had enough commitment to it, really. In the sort of the 20 odd years, I don't think my guitar playing, of which is just there, has ever really improved. It's kind of cowboy chords.
Yeah.
For me. Yeah.
And so when did you change direction? Was it after Poptones? It was like, let's go straight into advertising? Or?
So after Poptones, I graduated and got a job at Shifty Disco Records, which is in Oxford, which is, their claim to fame really was that they had a band called the Young Knives, who were good and doing all right. And they had Tom York's brother's band called The Unbelievable Truth, which is a very underrated band. And I did that for a bit. So after they kind of allowed me to write press releases at Poptones for the Hives. When they first sort of were imported, I guess, from Sweden. And in writing press releases, I found out that I was quite good at it, and I was trusted with it. And then the record industry to me was just lots of spreadsheets and sort of lugging CDs around. So it lost its glamour really quickly, I think. And, it was, there were certainly at Poptones a lot of drugs around as well. So everyone seemed a bit flaky.
Right.
To me. And it became very uncool very quickly.
Yeah, do you think when you see the more industry side of the music industry, would it be the equivalent to, not to disrespect our friends in media, but would it be like, I want to be a creative director and ended up working in the media side? Just pushing the adverts onto the billboards and onto the TV.
Yeah, may possible. I mean, for me, it was, I think, being able to do those press releases and being able to be creative and make something and create something. Was exactly what I wanted to do, and then fluked my way into an advertising position, almost on the basis of being able to talk about Led Zeppelin for an hour, but that's another story.
So what was that? Was that romancing the interviewer?
Yeah, so kind of. So the CD of the agency I went to, I think he'd been drinking, but we never opened my collection of press releases, this little folder I had. And we spoke about Led Zeppelin, and I think he enjoyed it. At the end of it, he said, "Can you start tomorrow?" And that was my fluky way into the ad industry. So never had any grand ambition to work in advertising at all. And then as soon as I started, I realised I really liked it, and it's gone all right since then.
I said to Hugh Todd, who was just recently at Mullen, he said, I was like, why, young artists, young creatives, why work in advertising? And he said, money, you get paid for it. So. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're going to get, you can do well, of course. But I don't think even from when I was a junior to now, salaries aren't massively different for people starting out. That was 2003 when I started.
Wow.
But it's a way to be creative and actually get paid for it.
Yeah. So do you think it's kind of a myth that, or the idea that if you want to be pulling in huge salaries, then you have to be at the founding partner level for a big agency?
Yeah, probably. It's kind of, I think it's like a sort of Saatchi Brothers myth. It's that sort of 80s sort of yuppie kind of personality, which I don't think really exists anymore. And a lot of the sort of, things like Mad Men kind of sort of perpetuate that myth. There are obviously people that make a huge amount of money in advertising. And we can all do very well out of it once you get to a more senior level. But I don't think it's not banking.
No, it's not big finance. And that comes up all the time, as people always say, the public think it's Mad Men, whereas on the inside, especially in this age we're in now, the creative agencies are running around scared of clients. I'm not sure what's changed. Has that changed in your lifetime?
I think, I'd definitely say, client, it's harder. Commercial agencies maybe find it harder because I think once they say the day you win a client is the day you start losing them. And, the client generally holds all the power because they sort of allocate how much money your agency is getting. So, I think I can't imagine it's ever been that much different, but you have to please your client. You get these sort of mythical stories of, creative directors grabbing marketing directors by the scruff of the neck and telling them what they're going to do with their money. Yeah. I don't always quite believe it. But, I think, you've just got, if you can have a good relationship with your client, so there's trust each way, it generally works really well, and nobody feels like they're getting ripped off, or the other party's trying to pull one over on them. But I've certainly, in the bigger agencies I've worked in, you can see that happening on most clients. It's kind of about the money and trying to keep that income stream alive and well.
Yeah, And that's why I was sort of confused about it, because without putting numbers on it, I'm quite new to the game career-wise, just careers generally, but also advertising. So I am trying not to do that thing we discussed where I'm like, Don Draper, Mad Men, that looks like the world to be in. What's going on? Why is everyone complaining about media spend? But
you just got to kind of just. I think success in advertising kind of comes down to, well, two things. It's relationships and the talent of the creative agency, and that involves everyone working on it. You kind of, only as strong as your weakest team member, I suppose. But yeah, relationships. It's there's still people that Tim and I are lucky enough they still call us to this day, ask us what we're up to or if we're available to do X, Y, and Z, and that's really gratifying.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're allowed to say if it's in your BBC contract not to mention, but are there any agencies out there at the moment you have particular respect for? You're like, they are absolutely nailing it, and I'd love to be part of that team.
Oh well, yeah. Absolutely. I still look to Full Creative as one of my favourite agencies around. They're amazing, and then it comes down to, especially the agencies like Whedon and Kennedy, sort of globally, are just amazing. Year after year. Uncommon are only a couple of years old. They're absolutely incredible. And then sort of the older stalwarts, agencies like BBH. There's still sort of a mythical grandeur about them, and the work they do is great. I think there's a lot of people doing it very well. But yeah, they're the kind of X Factor agencies to me.
The one that keeps coming up in these discussions for me is Adam and Eve, and
I forgot them as well. Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is obviously the founders split off last year, and now they look like they're having a race to start the next big one because they've all done new startups again. So.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. People like Ben Priest, I used to follow his career when he was at Rainey Kelly, so before he started Adam and Eve, and used to think, he's sort of several years older than me, but I used to think, if I can reach that level by his age, I'll be really happy. Amazingly talented people. And also, just coming back to it, they all seem really nice and friendly when they're interviewed, and they're just thoroughly nice people from what I can get.
Do you not buy this myth that if you're super successful, you also have to be a bit of a tough case and be a bit disagreeable?
No, I absolutely loathe all that. No, I don't really respect people. If you don't have to be awful just because you're doing well. That arrogance is, I think Tim and I have always prided ourselves on being the opposite of that. You still see it. I think it's a bit of a sort of dying character in the ad world, but there's one or two old school people that we've encountered that I'd never care to encounter again.
I think we've all been there. But let's go through the music. So obviously it goes without saying, and sometimes I ask people, is it important to you or not? Well, obviously it's important to you. Mm-hmm. But was there a single record that kicked things off for you where you were like, whoa, I did not know this existed?
In terms of advertising or just music generally?
Music generally as a fan.
Oh, as a fan. I've got very clear memories of loving. My mum and dad had a tape of Help by the Beatles in the car when we were kids. Loving that. But I didn't feel like my musical taste was cool until sort of maybe it was 12 or 13 when REM brought out Monster.
Yeah.
And that was that's the first cool album I ever bought. And then from there, sort of went on this sort of indie odyssey of, various bands that are just amazing. Like, I don't know, Radiohead, and that led me into listening to lots of David Bowie, and then you go back and discover bands like the Smiths and all this sort of thing. My music collection is now completely online, but there was a time when I had thousands of CDs.
Have you gotten into the vinyl thing?
Yeah, I've got a lot of vinyl actually. It's all downstairs in boxes. I haven't got an attractive enough record player for my girlfriend Emma to let me have it out in the house. But Spotify is on all day. I certainly get the sort of value for money out of that.
100%. Yeah. Do you work with it on?
Sometimes, if I'm writing, no.
Yeah.
If I'm not writing, yes. It's weird. There's so many of my career, and I can't really think of examples, but I know I've heard lyrics, and it kind of changes how you're writing something, or you steal a little bit for a headline. But yeah, it's a massive part of what we do, and yeah, music's always been important, definitely.
Was there, because you said you got into, did you say you got into Monster, REM, when you were 12, just there?
About 12 or 13, I think, yeah, when it came out.
Did you ever have that phase of liking stuff that your parents were just not happy with?
Yeah, my parents were a little bit too old for sort of punk, so when I started listening to like the Clash, and they were, I mean, my parents are quite cool. I mean, my parents are big sort of 50s fans and have got a jukebox and go to the Weekenders and stuff, so they're always quite supportive of the music I like. I don't know, maybe I seem to have memories of having like the Prodigy on, or Chemical Brothers when I was younger, and yeah, my mum and dad didn't really like it. It was all a bit boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. What I've noticed sort of happening now is that the generation that grew up with what was considered anti-establishment and edgy, because of course punk is going through its old age. It's having
yeah, absolutely.
And the complaint often is that I hear from the old people is, oh, what we had was edgy. There's nothing offensive now. But my suspicion is that's because they're not listening to the trap scene, XXXTentacion, you know, and those kind of artists. Because we went to see Octavian at the Academy, and that looked like a punk show. Yeah.
Wow.
Already I'm only in my 20s, but I'm too old to stand anywhere near the front, so I just watched it from the back.
Yeah, you got to be careful standing in the front. I went deaf in this ear for about a fortnight. I was at the Charlatans gig when I was about 17 or 18.
Oh, wow.
I've never stood too near a speaker ever again.
Where was that?
That was at De Montfort Hall just after Us and Us Only came out, I think.
Yeah. Any other big gigs you went to?
Yeah, so Nebworth, Oasis at Nebworth was one of the first gigs I ever went to.
Amazing.
Pretty mad. I saw Bowie at Glastonbury, which has since become like legendary. So that was amazing. Yeah, I've been to tons. I used to I was a bit of a nerd and used to keep a diary of all the gigs I went to, and at university it was 2 or 3 a week. Yeah. Yeah, been to some big ones. I went to see Father John Misty a year or two ago in Manchester. That was one of my favourites of recent times. But
was that at the Apollo?
It was at the Apollo.
Yeah. I was meant to be there. I had a car accident that night, but yeah.
Oh no way!
Yeah.
Oh well, it was really good.
I'm glad to hear it.
Well, he played at Albert Hall in Manchester as well, which again, that was about a year before then. It was really cool.
Well, I just listened to Pure Comedy, and I was like, this is just Elton John from the 70s.
It is actually. I've never really thought of that. But yeah, it's great. Yeah, I love him. He's kind of my, Spotify do that list of your top 10. He's been my number one for about 3 years.
Yeah. Are you a fan of The National?
Yeah, don't mind The National. I'm not a massive fan of the guy's voice, but I can listen to the odd song.
So I'm guessing that you don't also delve into that. The family tree to me looks like Interpol and sort of Joy Division. Is that not really your vibe? That kind of dark?
Oh no, Joy Division massively is. I think, especially because I live in Wilmslow, and it's kind of magical to me that just down the road is sort of where Joy Division began.
Yeah.
Joy Division. Yeah, huge fan of Joy Division. Interpol. I find them a bit of a Joy Division cover band, so maybe not so much. But bands like, and what they, New Order and everything, sort of factory related. It's nice coming from the Midlands to move to Manchester, which, when we were kids was always magical from a musical point of view and far cooler than the Birmingham area.
Yeah, well, you guys still have Black Sabbath down there, but
that's right, yeah.
Swim Deep more recently, but interestingly, you are in the. You say you're in Wilmslow?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're in the hometown of the only super successful Manchester band since the 90s. The 1975 are from Wilmslow. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Doves as well. I was a big fan of Doves.
Doves.
Yeah.
So What's excluding the one we mentioned before, being in Abbey Road, what's the best music in an advert that comes to mind? Either a composed track or a synced?
I think classically, I mean, there's kind of three examples. I think three are quite cliched examples. So you think of, Guinness Certified, excuse me.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking, actually, the use of Phil Collins in the Capri's Gorilla ad was absolutely incredible. But composed, and I think the fact that sort of nearly 30 years later, I know all the lyrics to the Milky Way ad with the red car and the blue car. And that ad, I remember my sister and I I'm sure we'd record it and watch it back over and over. That to me is, that's still magical and still works today. And I think it was even running relatively recently.
Just an idea that never died.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever had, as a creative, you ever put something forward to the client on the music side saying, this is the track that we think is working, and they've just not had it?
So many times, yeah. At the BBC, it's very difficult to get anything retro out because we're constantly striving for an under 35 audience. So
why is that battle so hard for the BBC?
I don't know. Well, it's relevant. So the BBC is obviously struggling with, not struggling, its biggest challenge is Netflix and the way people consume media today. So there's a younger audience, and the logical thing to say is, right, if we're appealing to that younger audience, it needs to be sort of a modern track. And yeah, we've had a few times sort of what we think that, it might be some sort of soul track from the 70s or some, I'm sure we've had some Herbie Hancock on a recommendation once, but no, never really gets away. And then sort of, again, being a big fan of the Charlatans, Tim and I almost put One to Another on a Vauxhall ad. And in hindsight, I'm really glad that they turned it down because it would have ruined one of my favourite tracks.
Yeah. Not for the price tag, just for your satisfaction, it would have been a bad choice. Yeah,
it would have been bad. And that was a funny one. Even Adele, she turned down $300,000 to use her song on that ad as well. And we ended up with Noel Gallagher's debut solo single, I think.
What, aka What a Life?
Yeah,
brilliant. I've been thrown for a loop there. Oh no, because I was thinking about this recently when you mentioned the BBC relevance thing, because I was thinking, I remember the Radio 1 upheaval when they got rid of Chris Moyles and brought in Grimshaw. And then, of course, inevitably Grimshaw aged into the demographic they were trying to lose because Radio 1 was just for 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's just the media. I don't know.
Yeah, they're supposed to graduate, I think, to Radio 2. It doesn't even really work. I don't know. So as Radio 2, I don't feel ready for Radio 2 yet, though I know I sit firmly in that demographic. I
think that's a real problem they maybe have as a brand at the moment, because I remember about 2006-07 when Radio 2 was run by, I'm going to be crucified, I can't remember her name, Leslie, I think she was called. Mm-hmm. And that's when they had Russell Brand on, and of course the scandal shut that down. But Radio 2 was a pretty cool station at that time.
Yeah, it went through a moment. Yeah, having Jonathan Ross on at the weekend was, at the time, felt quite edgy, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I used to occasionally listen to Terry Wogan, as he was quite funny. In a sort of really naff way. But as soon as that, is it Ken Bruce comes on, I can't bear.
Yeah, God's Waiting Room, my dad called it.
Yeah, that's about right.
But I mean, because obviously you don't want people in their 30s to be saying, I'm not ready to graduate to Radio 2 yet, because that's
no. I think I'm stuck with Six Music. Feels right for me now, even though that sometimes feels a bit you're a bit old before your time sometimes, because it's all talking about very niche bands from a long time ago and stuff. But
it's a very Mighty Boosh record store. But
definitely, yeah.
Do you ever flick to Radio 1 and then just check your emotions and go, what is this?
No, not really. I mean, my son's 9. I'm kind of thinking he might ask for it before too long. But no, I couldn't really tell you the first thing about what's played on Radio 1 at the moment. I know I've worked with a lot of the DJs, because often we're getting people like Chlorampho and people like Maya Jama to do voiceovers for us for various things. But no, I know very little about what is actually played.
Well, that's something I was getting sort of insecure about yesterday, because like all people who were, I'm like so many people in the industry, wanted to be in a massive rock band, and it never happened, and so I had to find a real job. But you never stop trying. Most us who work in the actual music side of things, you never stop trying. You're always making records, you're always trying to push it out there. And then I was like, even though I'm still like under 30, I just couldn't imagine even trying to relate to the young audience. I don't know what they're into, and I wasn't cool with them at the time, so never mind now.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
But one last thing, because obviously you'll be wanting to get back to working presumably in the garden. Music-wise with BBC Creative, I get the impression that BBC generally, you have kind of a much not an easier time, but there's a blanket agreement. You won't have to like negotiate for budgets. Is there stuff you can just access?
Yeah, so BBC has a blanket licensing agreement for most music, not every piece of music, so we can run it through a system to see whether we can clear it or not. So not having to spend half your production budget on a big track if that's what you want is great, and it always adds a little bit of an X factor to what you're doing. But I'd say still probably the majority of what we do still uses library music. Just because it's easier. I mean, there's certain, if the tracks are published in the USA or they're by the Beatles or whatever, you generally can't get hold of that, and you can't just use that as you wish. But yeah, it's something that does make the whole production side of what we do a lot easier, certainly.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say about the Beatles, because I don't know if you saw the chat I had with Rory Sutherland. He was saying, I don't know if the Beatles have handled their legacy that well, because they're just so inaccessible now.
Well, it's funny. It always reminds me of that. Again, it's the Led Zeppelin guys tried to do the same until I heard they found out there was a band on Spotify called. So they refused to let Spotify access their music for years. And then found out that this tribute band called Led Zeppelin or something like that had become millionaires because they'd done such good sound-alikes, and they realised how much money they were missing out on. But yeah, I think Rory Sutherland's right. The Beatles probably haven't done enough. Yeah,
because there's that famous Mad Men. 30 seconds on Mad Men cost $250,000 for Tomorrow Never Knows. Not even like a massively sing-alongy Beatles song. But
yeah. No, it's crazy, but they're the Beatles and can.
Yeah, it's still, if you go to Piccadilly Records, it's still going to be 35 quid for one of the vinyls. So
that's mad. That's absolutely crazy. I'm lucky enough I inherited all the Beatles and Stone stuff from my parents. So got all those records downstairs.
Best Stones album?
Probably Exile on Main Street.
Exile on Main Street. There's no contender.
Yeah, I think that's a cliched answer, but yeah, that's.
I always want to go deeper and be like, best track from Exile on Main Street.
Tumbling Dice, I think, is where I tend to go. Quite regularly. That's it.
I always go, Just Want to See His Face into Let It Loose. Just a great double-sider.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, amazing album.
So you're in Media City in peacetime, I presume. So
in peacetime, yes. I haven't been there for, it feels like ages since I've been to Media City. But yeah, we're all closed down and working from home for the foreseeable.
Well, this is like something like the 20th one of these I've recorded, and we're going to put out one a week. So by the time it comes out, it'll be snowing, and this won't be relevant. So
exactly. Yeah. Who's that? Okay.
Yeah. But well, I guess hopefully we'll see you around Media City when you're back.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Greg. Thanks so much.
No problem. Take care. Speak soon.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.